Welcome to Creative Circle Houston's webinar on finding freelance work and managing projects remotely. I am, of course, Ramsey McCoy. I am the lead recruiter here in Creative Circle Houston, and I'm excited to moderate the team webinar this afternoon. I would like to tell you guys a little bit about us. For those of you who are not familiar with Creative Circle, we are the largest creative staffing agency in the business. We connect people, clients to candidates, and we focus in advertising, marketing, digital, and creative opportunities. So our goal today is to help you all connect some of those dots, come up with some really cool ideas, and see if we can be that additional resource for you. To go over a couple of things today, we will definitely discuss. I do want to set a few ground rules before we get started. We put this conversation together to help answer some questions that you all have about how to position yourself in today's new market with everything going on. And I do want to apply to all those who registered and signed up because this is the first step. So thank you so much for joining us. We've received many more questions, so we won't be able to get to every single one of them, and we will be checking the chat box as we go today, but we will answer as many as time will allow, and we'll do our best. I also want to note, while we have these fantastic backgrounds, obviously we're not in the office and we are practicing social distancing, so bear with us if there's any technical issues. We'll do our best to resolve those as quickly as possible. On a side note, if you have any questions about filing for unemployment, today we're not going to be covering that, so I would say contact your state's unemployment office for those types of questions. During today's panel, we will cover freelancing in the current pandemic, being a new freelancer, and career transitions, using this time to sharpen your skills and looking ahead. And then at the end, we'll have some more question and answer time and show you a couple more resources. I would like to go ahead and introduce our panel for you today, starting with Sarah Mayberry. She is the senior recruiter for our team here in Houston, and before joining Creative Circle, she worked in public relations for 11 years. She had the opportunity to work with some of Houston's largest ad agencies on accounts across healthcare, medical science, food and beverage, legal, recreation, and real estate. She has been on the Creative Circle team for over 4 years, and as I mentioned, she is currently the senior recruiter for Houston. Mr. Jeff Bush has over 25 years of experience in documentary, filmmaking, and photography, most notably serving as the director of photography for the Wall Street Journal in New York, where he was the go-to lead for short and long-term documentary on domestic and international location projects. After moving to Houston in 2018, he left the full-time employment side and now is a full-time freelancer and works for himself as a director of photography, videographer, and still photographer. And we're excited to have him join us today because not only is he a candidate for Creative Circle, but he's also a client. So he has a very unique perspective. So let's get started. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
I'm going to take a moment and just kind of go through some of the questions based on the categories we talked about. Jeff, I'm going to start with you. How is the current pandemic affecting your job, how you do your job and your workflow?
Well, currently I've been fortunate in that I've had pretty steady work because I've gotten work through one of the companies that was deemed essential. So I was able to continue working there. Shortly before the pandemic, I was still going from different freelance gigs to other gigs. And I think the way it's affected me mostly is that on the networks, there's a lot of, like on the Facebook pages and things where I network, there's a lot of concern and misgivings about your next gig. So a lot of us, this came on and we had a gig, and then we started, because you try to get gigs as many months as you can, and then you start seeing these gigs fall off the calendar or be postponed or be canceled. So I'd say the biggest effect that it's had has been more psychological than anything else. Because you know in the back of your head it's going to end, but at the same time, you're used to trying to get gigs really far out. So I would say it's affected me in the way that I've been thinking and having to keep calm about what was going on.
Got you. That makes total sense. This is a question for both of you. Sarah, if you want to kick it off. Jeff, you were talking a little bit about this already, but how has it changed how your clients work with you?
So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily changed how our clients work with us, but maybe more so the manner in which we are communicating with our clients and servicing them in this moment. I mean, we are still able to provide the exact same service level that we were able to provide before the pandemic. Our clients still have access to top talent. And so that hasn't changed. The process and how our clients work with us hasn't changed, but their needs have shifted. And so because of that, we are, of course, shifting our outreach strategy based on that, and mainly just focusing on letting them know that we are here to support them in whatever way that may be, and keeping that line of communication open.
Nice. Jeff, did you want to tackle that one as well?
I think it's called upon different resources than I was used to dealing with. So doing a lot more editing, because that can be done sort of in isolation. But as far as like calling upon all your resources of finding things to edit, like for a lot of the production, product videos and things like that, I'm having to, instead of going out and shooting stuff, draw upon stock images and increase my animation skills and things like that to provide stuff for the client. But it's also sort of a way of like you bringing things to the client of saying, okay, we can't go shoot this, but you know, we can take this stock imagery and this music and we can still create something. We just can't go physically shoot it. So it's sort of a shifting of your resources.
Gotcha. We just got a question that came in through the chat. So Sarah, I'll ask you, is Creative Circle seeing an increase in companies looking for freelance or remote workers?
Yeah, I mean, that's been the primary focus of job opportunities that we've been seeing right now. We are still in communication with clients about full-time opportunities, because again, this is not our forever, right? So we are definitely still recruiting and planning for what's to come. But in terms of what we've been seeing most immediately and most recently, definitely has been more so focused on project-based work that is, of course, off-site, since that's the status of how we're working as a nation right now.
Okay, that's a good segue into this next question. And Jeff, I want you to start. What are some things that freelancers can do? I think you've mentioned a couple, but what are some things freelancers can do to continue finding work during this pandemic?
Besides sign up with Creative Circle, I think one of the things they can do is maintain their networks and just really figure out what they can offer. I don't know if it falls into the category of finding clients, but it does kind of fall into the category of not letting the social media and things like that get you down about what's going on. And everybody wants to complain about there not being any work and everything. But like Sarah said, there's going to be work out there. It might not be exactly what you were doing before the pandemic, but you can still do that remote work. Mm-hmm. As far as like what I've been actively doing, trying to find work during the pandemic is, that's mainly it. Just maintaining the people that I've worked with before and trying to always be bringing something. Like the client may not have realized that could be done, you know, just maybe bring something new to the client and say, well, we can't shoot it, but we can do this. Mm-hmm. So offering alternatives, even if the client doesn't take you up on it, they appreciate you offering alternatives.
Yeah. Jeff, are there any platforms or special places you go to look for new opportunities or to meet clients?
Production Hub. I've I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's more geared specifically toward video work. Um, uh, I'm on a ton of things like, Indeed and things like that.
Mhm.
And although those don't typically lead to like a specific job, you find out about what companies do, use your kind of services. And then you can reach out separately to those companies and just, you know, maybe 2 out of 10 will respond, but it's a way of like broadening your net a little bit. So even if you're not interested in that particular position, they do, like if you're a graphics artist, you go to their site and you see they use a lot of graphics and things like that. So making them aware of you as an artist or as a creator is a thing. What else? I'm trying to think of over the past, say, roughly February and March. So we had a lot of gigs that canceled that I had gotten just through my network, through people that I work with, sort of like on a quarterly basis. And one particular one, we switched the whole thing over from a live thing that we were going to do to a live streaming thing that we were going to do that we could all do in our respective cities.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really the only thing that I've had to do so far. With the gig that I'm on right now, like I said, we're an essential company producing soaps and hand sanitizer and things like that, in addition to the normal line of product that they have. So I've been kind of fortunate to get this gig at the same time that the pandemic sort of swept up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sarah, there's another question that came through for you. Does having a freelance period in your resume negatively impact the way recruiters view your resume to be considered for a position in a company later on?
So from the recruiter's perspective, no. I mean, I freelance work, and the work that's produced by freelancers is very valuable work. It's really great work. It can be really strong work, and the clients that you're working with as a freelancer can be very notable clients. So we don't discount that whatsoever. I have heard candidates say, well, I feel like when clients look at my resume, they see most recently I was freelancing, and they might discount me for full-time opportunities. And so I can see where, that's a struggle whenever you're trying to sell yourself with a piece of paper. But I think that's where partnering with like a staffing agency does bring some added value, because we are, of course, communicating directly with these hiring managers. And when we're sending your information over to them, we're explaining to them why we think they should take a look at you and consider you for this particular opportunity and be that advocate for you. Because for sure on the recruitment side, freelance work, we don't discount that at all. I've seen some amazing freelance work. I've seen freelancers working for some really large companies as freelancers, and that work is very valuable and should absolutely be considered real, true work in addition to any full-time opportunities they've had.
Absolutely. Jeff, I kind of have a two-parter for you. And then I definitely want to focus a little bit more on this aspect of freelance, because I know a lot of people have a lot of questions about that. But how do you maintain client loyalty during this crisis? And how are you communicating with your clients? Are you setting up like a regularly scheduled meeting time? Are you just reaching out to them whenever you have an update? What's your strategy?
Well, the second question is, it's mostly through email, and it's mostly in reference to projects either that were in the process during when the pandemic hit and we all started sheltering, or it's for future projects that have been mentioned. And again, it all goes back to like networking, because most of the work, 90% of the work, 85% of the work that I got was from previous clients. So that gives you sort of an excuse to check in with someone, to like be authentic and check in with them. but it also keeps you first and foremost. So for the first question is, like whenever you have a gig with a client, like I don't think during the pandemic we can like, you know, the time to start like getting the loyalty of the client is when you have the client, when you have the work. So it's hard to do it during a pandemic, but all of this groundwork about, you know, trust and quality and all that stuff kind of starts from like the moment that you get the gig.
Excellent.
So the advice there is to just, you know, like always deliver more than the client expected.
Yeah.
And so because, you know, we're kind of, at least as a photographer or a videographer, uh, you can keep giving more and more and more. And it doesn't necessarily, you know, you don't necessarily rate your or rank your quality of work to your fee. So in other words, I can never work below my standard. No matter what they pay me, more or less, I can never do less work than is my personal standard. So, and that's good and bad, but the client always appreciates you going more, and that's what builds the loyalty to the client. To me, I think.
I love that, Jeff. That's so true because clients do value, and you have to treat each job as though you're making the most money, even though I know sometimes it's a little bit disheartening when you're making a little less.
Right.
One of the things that I know a number of people are curious about is transitioning from full-time to freelance. And there are some new freelancers out there who haven't done it because their work has been focused on the full-time side. And while Creative Circle places full-time positions, of course, we also place a lot of freelance or hourly remote type positions. So this is another question for both of you. Sarah, if you'll kick this one off. As a freelancer, how do you determine and set rates for those projects? I know Jeff was talking a little bit before about, you know, the number may not match up with what the quality of, well, it should match with the quality of your work because your quality should always be great, but how do you set those numbers? And then Jeff, if you can piggyback and take more of a general standpoint of how you set your rates kind of answer.
Yeah, so I'll start with, I mean, at Creative Circle, I think we look at freelance rates maybe a little bit different than you might be doing on your own as a freelancer. So all of our freelancers through Creative Circle are W-2 employees. So what we typically look at is the salary range that a candidate would be in. So if your salary is 60 to 65 annually, then we'd look at the comparable hourly rate to that, which would be about 30 to 32 an hour. However, in talking with freelancers, I've heard that for them, sometimes it's more beneficial to do project-based quotes versus hourly rates. So that might be something to think about because you are going to be working as a 1099 contract worker when you're working on your own. So there are different factors that you're going to need to be taking into account whenever you're quoting for projects. So sometimes it's easier to quote as a project whole, regardless of how many hours are going to be spent on it versus the hourly rate. And also just, you know, be fluid, as Jeff said, so be open to being fluid with your rates. One quote you give to one client doesn't mean you're set to be at that particular rate for all other clients going forward. You can definitely think about things like how much you want that particular project and how much you want to win that particular assignment. If it's a rebranding project and that's something you haven't done, but really, really want to get under your belt, you might be more flexible on your rate for that particular project. Or if it's a client that you feel like there could be some future opportunities, a lot of a long-standing relationship where more work could be coming in, that might be another area where you're open to flexibility on your rates. So there, I mean, you can definitely do some market research for sure. I'd recommend that and kind of looking at what is sort of the market standard in your city for your particular craft or skill set and starting at that point. But a good way to kind of think about it, just to get the math and numbers going, is think about salary wise. If you've been full-time, what is that salary range that you're in? And you can kind of start there in terms of determining your hourly rate. and then maybe add a little bit more to it since you're going to have to be paying back taxes, of course, as a 1099.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially the point of the maybe taking a little less for a project that you want to get particular experience in is like one of the key things that I thought about, because I was a full-time employee for 15 years. And even though I did side gigs on the side, I could afford to go a little bit cheaper with that because I had a full-time job. And if I wanted to do a particular kind of shoot or something, I could do that for a little bit less. The flip side is you don't want to undermine the market for any particular thing, because you want to be valued for what you do. So it's always a give and take. So like whenever I would judge a project, it would be, once I became a freelancer, it would be, first of all, how much time is it going to take? And am I doing anything else? And a lot of times is if I'm not doing anything else and the price was about, the fee was about right, then I would do it to get the experience. So I think you have to weigh what you really want to be doing. And we're all going to have to we all do gigs that we don't necessarily, it's not what we want to do for the rest of our lives. But that's one of the beauties about freelance work, is that you can try something out and you're not full, once it's over, you don't have to go back the following Monday and do it over again. So that's a good thing about being freelance. But I would say I look at the market. When I first moved to Houston, I did a lot of research and just really benchmarked with people. I just reached out to people. I would find production companies. This works for video. I don't know for stills. I don't know about like graphic design or anything like that. But for my particular skill, I reached out to a lot of video production places, and not asking for a job, but just sort of asking for information and just sort of benchmarking. So I did a lot of that research to determine sort of what the common or the median fee was for the type of thing that I wanted to be doing. And then I based my fee on that. Mm-hmm. And then it would be sliding according to, like, if it's a project that I was excited about, but they didn't have any money, I would slide and do that. I always the client always knew that they weren't paying as much as like I would normally be getting, or as much as another photographer or videographer would be getting. Mm-hmm. But they also knew that I had a particular passion for whatever it is that project was. Because what that does is it sort of sends the message out there, because they will talk to someone and they'll say, hey, this guy from Creative Circle did a really good job. They're not going to talk about, they're not going to talk about specifics about how much you got paid. They're just going to talk about what a great job you did. So, and that works the same, I'm sure, for Creative Circle when you guys are negotiating, as it does for me. If I'm just talking to a client, directly, if they've gotten my name from someone or they've seen my work, so they just look at it as an individual project. I think one thing I can say is that clients don't like package deals. So in other words, they don't want to, you don't want to say, I get $1,200 a day from me and all of my equipment, because that is sort of like a little bit too pat for a client. I think the client wants to be considered as an individual and like the most important project that you're working on if you're working for them. So even though I have like a base reference for what my fee is, it's always in flux depending on the project. And then there's creative flux, because there are things that you can't control the price of besides your fee, that the client has to understand that this costs this, this is out of my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say looking at each individual client as an individual and their projects as individuals. Did I get off the topic there?
No, that was perfect. I think that's
Okay.
really smart. No, I appreciate you saying that, because that's one of the things that we thrive on at Creative Circle is creative solutions. And you do have to tailor things to the client. So as a freelancer, you can't just say it's one thing for everyone. It's going to be based on budget. It's going to be based on need. It's going to be based on passion of the projects and all of that. So absolutely, you answered the question.
Okay.
We are getting a lot of questions about resumes and all of that. So I kind of want to switch gears into that sharpening your skills category. So I'll start with a question for you, Sarah, but both of you, or Jeff, feel free to jump in if you like. What are some of the most valuable skills freelancers can learn to be more competitive in this market? Or what is something that they can do to showcase that work on their resume?
To kind of answer, being competitive in the market, some things that you definitely want to be adaptable to the market and its changes, especially right now. We all have to be adapting to shifts and focuses and kind of changes in the new norm. I'd also say it's really important to just make sure you're keeping your skills relevant to the market. Digital, for instance, right now is absolutely where it's at. And that's digital across the board, marketing through design. And so making sure those skills are relevant absolutely keeps you competitive. I'd also say just being open to learning new tools and new ways of doing things. This is a perfect time to do some continued education and to get familiar with tools and platforms that are in demand in the industry, but maybe you haven't quite worked in, you haven't worked in a lot. This is the perfect time to be playing in those platforms and tools and getting yourself familiar with that. Also updating that resume and portfolio. This is the perfect time to be doing that. There might be some projects that you've been meaning to add to your portfolio, just haven't been able to yet. This is the time to absolutely do that. And I would also say don't shy away from spec work at times. I know there are sometimes different types of projects that candidates feel this is something I'm definitely able to do. I just haven't been in a role where that's been given to me as an opportunity. I think you can definitely use this time to also create some spec work for yourself. Obviously label it as such on your portfolio, but this is a time for you to showcase all of your skills, not just the work that you've done to date, but hey, this is what I can also do. You might say, I'm really great at 3D animation. I just haven't been in a role where I've gotten to do that. Put some 3D animation projects in your portfolio 100% and show that that's an added skill set that you can bring to the table.
Jeff, before you tackle the question, I did want to know, I'm looking at the clock and I know we're at the halfway mark. So if anyone needs to hop off, I totally understand. We are recording this. So if you want to come back and catch the second piece, no problem. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
That's okay. Well, I'm glad she brought it up about spec work or passion projects, because that was huge in my transition from being full-time to freelance. Doing and you can't always do it because sometimes it costs so much money or you don't have the time to do it. But I don't know, you always have the time to do stuff you want to do. So if there's a passion project, like I say, I can only speak to photography and videography. But when I wanted to start moving into advertising and product photography, I, number one, started watching YouTube and every video and Creative Live on that subject to learn the techniques. But I just started doing it at home and learning how to do it. So I was sort of in a way that saying, and I don't remember the saying exactly, but it's like, dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. Your skills are the same thing. Do the projects that you want to do, and then you're going to get good at that and people are going to see that. So that's really important. And that's something that we can do, and depending on what your craft is, that's something you can do alone with very little budget, and you can do it while you're sheltering in place. But that's huge. So that was key to in my transition.
Yeah.
Um, and now, so as far as like resumes, I'm the worst person in the world to ask about resumes, so I have to skip that question. I don't like resumes at all. And actually, as a videographer and still photographer, resumes are not that key. Having a up-to-date portfolio that's, you know, on trend but still unique is like the balance there. So because people want to see what you're doing as a visual artist, people want to see what you're currently doing.
Yep.
So
I totally agree. And I'm going to do a little self plug for Creative Circle for those who need help with resumes. The recruiters here in our office are great resources for that. So we can definitely help. I know a couple of questions have come through about platforms where you can go to look for additional places to learn extra skill sets. I will call out a few. I don't know, Sarah and Jeff, if you have a couple, but also those who are viewing, if you have any ideas, throw them in the chat. Let us know your ideas. I know, Jeff, you mentioned YouTube is a great platform. You know, some people are concerned about the fee on certain platforms because they need, you know, maybe they can't afford the lynda.coms, but lynda.com's good, Skillshare. Creative Circle has some really good resources on our website and LinkedIn as well. Did y'all have any other kind of places to learn new skill sets or develop current skill sets?
I used to, up until the end of, in fact, for 2 more days, I think, or 3 more days, I have a subscription to Creative Live, which I last year got a year subscription, which is a little pricey. I mean, it's like, I don't know exactly how much, but it's between $150 and $200 for a year of unlimited. But it is, I'm obviously more than paid for itself. So if you can afford, I recommend Creative Live. Udemy or Udemy, Udemy. I've watched a couple of their free stuff. That's always good. Um, and I've seen a lot of the master classes, but I don't honestly, and I'll go on record here saying I don't think the master class series is useful to someone sort of at my level. I mean, they're a little bit higher up, I guess, maybe or maybe a bigger picture type, but as far as like practical things, I didn't get a lot out of that. And then I have a couple of probably 5 people that I watch on YouTube because they put out weekly videos, and that's been the best as far as retraining.
Awesome.
And then you take that information and you do it on your own and you learn from that. So
absolutely. Okay, let's see. We talked a little bit already about this as we come to the end here. What is something, just so we can make sure we're all on the same page with this, what is something that designers should be doing during this time to prepare for future evolution of design? I know we're talking about, you know, developing skill sets. Sarah, you mentioned before making sure that you're flexible and that you're learning these new things. But are there any other ideas or points you want to make sure that people know about?
Well, in terms of like the evolution of the design, I would say the evolution is definitely on that digital side of design. So we've seen a lot of market demand for digital designers, web designers, UI designers, and UX. And so I would say if you're looking for an opportunity to kind of stay in the trend with where the market is evolving, I would definitely say that digital side of design. So if you don't have any projects, or maybe not many projects in your portfolio that showcase digital elements or digital assets that you've created, this goes back to those passion projects and that spec work. This is a great time to be adding those things to your portfolio and getting familiar with different platforms that digital designers or web designers need to be familiar with. I will also kind of plug a group that we've connected with is a great resource when it comes to UX and UI. So meetup.com, of course, is the broader name where you can absolutely go to get connected with groups in all different kinds of industries and focuses. But there's a group called Hexagon. They are a UX and UI group. The leader of that group is a UX designer for Home Depot. We connected with her and really love working with her and utilizing her as a resource for our own education on UI and UX. So that might be a resource for some of you guys to check out that have been more so in that traditional graphic design side and want to start transitioning into UI UX, since that's where the market is definitely in high demand.
Awesome.
I have one other thing that I just wanted to add is I've gotten a lot of not career advice, but a lot of creative advice from people I've contacted through Vimeo. So if I see someone's Vimeo, something that they did, I can reach out to them directly, and most of the time they'll respond to you, and they'll, if you want to know, well, how did you do that, or what did you do? So that's sort of one-on-one reaching out. And it's also good networking to do that.
I love that. And it's a really good segue because there was a follow-up for you, Jeff, but Sarah, I also wanted you to tackle this after he speaks to it, and I'll add any additional thoughts I have. But Jeff, what is the best platform for digital portfolio that you have found?
Vimeo.
WordPress. Well, for video, for sure, Vimeo, but in terms of like your website, are you using WordPress, Squarespace? What are your thoughts there?
Squarespace. So I have a Squarespace for my still photography. It also has some video on it, but so for video, it's Vimeo, and Squarespace for still photography. And it's just, I've been with Squarespace for, 3 years. And I've been with Vimeo I can't even remember how long I've been with Vimeo. So I just find in the industry, people for some reason like Vimeo better than YouTube. It's a better player experience. And Squarespace is just easy to use. I'm not sponsored by Squarespace, by the way, but it's just easy to use.
Sarah, do you have any ideas for people who aren't design or video photography, maybe copywriters, marketing professionals, when they're putting together their portfolio?
Yeah, no, I mean, for copywriters, I see candidates utilizing something called clippings. .com as a way to showcase their copywriting skills. And then, WordPress in general kind of, is been a platform that people have expressed is easy for them to use. There's templates, of course, that are already there for them to just kind of plug and play. You don't have to be a developer. Anyone who knows me, I'm not skilled in that way, and I can navigate my way around WordPress. So I feel like that's another platform kind of similar to Squarespace, where it's user friendly for those that you don't need to be really advanced on the technical side. And then there's also, of course, online portfolios are great. It's easy to share a link with the client. But I also I want candidates to also know that they can create. I've seen some really nice PDF portfolios that have been created, especially when your skill set is not maybe a visual direction. Maybe it's more marketing based, more analytics, more social media. We've seen some really nice PDF portfolios put together that social media candidates will showcase not only the content they've created, but they'll have an example of a content calendar they put together. They'll have an example of an analytics report that they've pulled, just to have some work samples that can be showcased to the client as an added, like, here's the resume, but also here's a really nice PDF portfolio that showcases some of that work that's not necessarily the visual side of creative and marketing.
Absolutely, absolutely. So for our final questions, I was just going to ask you both, any final pieces of feedback, any little nuggets that maybe we didn't get to cover that either of you wanted to share with everyone viewing today? Jeff, you can go first, or Sarah, whomever.
You go first, Sarah.
Well, I know we've we covered what we could with the time that we had allotted. I'm sure we could sit here and talk for another 30 minutes. I would just say that, you know, we here at Creative Circle, we're here to be a resource for you in whatever way that may be, for both our clients and our candidates. I would say, as you're out there on your own looking for job opportunities and interacting with businesses or clients that you're wanting to get work from, a key thing is just to remember we're all navigating the same rivers right now, and it's unknown for all of us. And it's the number one thing that we have found successful at Creative Circle when talking to our clients is just relating to them on a basic human level. The pandemic is not anything that we need to tiptoe around in terms of acknowledgement. We all know it's happening. And so whenever you're reaching out to clients, you know, sometimes it can feel weird to be like, well, I'm asking you to spend money in a time when that might be hard for you to do right now. But you don't have to be reaching out specifically in that particular way or even leading with that particular conversation. Reach out to them just on a genuine human level. Let them know that you understand that these are challenging times for them. Creative solutions, Jeff mentioned it several times. That's another key a key thing I would hit home on. You know, we were working with clients before you know, the quarantine, you know, work from home set in, and they were 40-hour-a-week projects. Well, now we're, you know, some creative solutions is we're talking with them with, you know, about maybe starting at part-time instead of full-time. That's an area where they'd be able to save money from a budget standpoint, but still go ahead and get the project started. So I would just say when you're out there talking with clients and exploring new opportunities, just remember, first and foremost, you're human, they're human. Yes, they might be a business owner, but you can definitely relate to them more on a human level, and build that relationship and that loyalty now that will lead to opportunities in the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, it's hard to add anything to that, but I mean, I would just say, keep in touch with your network, and like always have your network growing. And the way by doing that, and of course, once we can start working together, at least in our craft, once we can start working together again, it's easier to network because you work with people on a passion project and they'll remember you. And then in the future, you'll get work from them. But besides keeping up with your network, just learning and, you know, being inspired by like what you learn, inspired enough to actually do something as opposed to just watching. Don't just watch YouTube, but actually take it and then experiment with it and sort of make it your own. That would be my advice.
Absolutely.
And just to jump back in, there was one website I wanted to just call out that people might find beneficial. So right now, the Texas Workforce Commission, they have a website called workintexas.com. You can put in a keyword like marketing, graphic design, social media, put in your zip code, and then select 25-mile radius or 35-mile radius, and you'll get a search result of potential job opportunities that might fit that particular category you're looking, and that are close enough to you. So that's something that you guys might want to take a look at as well.
Sarah, earlier you had mentioned a platform, but I think your signal kind of broke up and people didn't hear it, so I want to repeat it. For anyone who does like copywriting or anything that showcases any type of content you've written, or even social media pieces, if you want to showcase in a PDF format, there's a website called clippings.me. That's a really good site for you.
Yes.
So as we come to the end of our time, I definitely want to say thank you again for everyone joining us. I know it's gloomy in Houston today, so if you're sitting in Houston, you're like, what's going on? But I hope that this webinar, as cheesy as it sounds, I hope it brightens up your day a bit and shared a little bit of hope and inspiration or just some new things. And if not, it reinforced things you already knew. So let's see. I know we're going to have a slide with a couple of more available resources for you. Here they are. Of course, check the Creative Circle website if you're looking for new opportunities. If you're someone who hasn't connected with us as a candidate and you're looking to connect with one of the recruiters, you can definitely reach out on our website under talent. But then also under our blog, we have some really awesome content that specifically speaks to COVID-19 things, not just like tips and tricks, but different resources on where to look. There are some candidates and clients that have given their perspective and some different things that they're doing currently. So check that out. And I mean, that's really all we have for you today. We're so happy you all joined us. I hope you enjoyed, and let us know your thoughts and feedback. And we look forward to connecting with you again in the future. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Jeff and Sarah, as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.